Hi, this is Frank Schaefer, and I want to thank you for sharing my YouTube videos and for watching them. And I would ask you, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It helps what I'm doing and get the word out. Thank you. Hi, this is Frank Schaefer, and I am a commentator and an author of both fiction and nonfiction. But today I want to explain something to you. And that is, it's time for someone, maybe an old male like me who's 72 years old, father of three, grandfather of five, to stand up and say, may I please explain what a real man is? You know, there were two articles I read today, one in the Wall Street Journal, one in the New York Times, that really read like one article on the subject of what a real man is, and in this case, what a real man isn't. And the one in the Wall Street Journal begins this way: Elon Musk is making things really clear. He is a bro. He is such a big-time bro that this past week he tweeted an apparent offer to impregnate America's sweetheart, Taylor Swift, and publicly detailed a raunchy joke about male and female anatomy that he wanted to tell on national television, end quote. And Elon Musk's fellow bro travelers, all these guys who are into saying they are real men, perhaps he protesteth too much. I mean, who needs to talk about being a real man who feels secure in his manhood? That's another issue. Parade themselves around the internet. You know, maybe they are billionaires who were born with perhaps less of a sense of security about their manhood than other people. They get hair transplants and they go to plastic surgery and they do special training regimes and they march around saying that they are real men. And they tell young men to measure up to this bro culture, build muscle, punch back, be manly. They mock women. They make disparaging comments about females and a quote woke culture that gives room to women and Black people and others, and they call it basically a sign of weakness. But you know what's interesting in this Wall Street article? It is all part of a public embrace of an idea of tough guy masculinity made popular through social media memes, white heterosexual males with money, power, success, and female conquests. A public version of Musk has emerged that is warm to strong man leaders and pushes back against what he describes as runaway political correctness, hemming in men and their natural predilections. Well, you know, what's interesting is this other article in the New York Times is also about Elon Musk. And it's about the fact that this real man has built a private army of security guards bigger than anyone else's, numbering perhaps 100 or more people. And they say that it's really more like his own private secret service because he is so afraid of everything. Perhaps because he makes comments about people like Taylor Swift that sound like a rapist's threat. And maybe he's aware of the fact that she has a boyfriend who happens to be a football star, or he calls somebody who's trying to rescue children in Thailand a pedo, a pedophile. You know, when you are born with a mental disability that causes you to lash out at people all across the globe as a billionaire, and then maybe some of these threats are real, but basically they're the same threats that people who always engage in bar fights feel when they get drunk and throw a glass of beer in somebody's face and get punched. Except Musk brings his own private army with him, as it were, and has everybody vetted. And if he uses a bathroom, he has the stall checked before he goes in. And he's got these private guys who go along with him. And even he uses them to run errands, to talk to people that he doesn't like what they're saying. And he sends his guys to say, Elon Musk would really like to hear back from you, according to this article, et cetera, et cetera. So how do these two things square up? Well, what's so interesting is later in the article, in the New York Times piece, it says the way Mr. Musk now lives now is different from others who are ultra wealthy. Warren E. Buffett, who is worth more than 154 billion, employs just one personal bodyguard, or rather he did for many years. Let's see, what's the difference between Warren Buffett and Elon Musk? Well, Warren Buffett is not a deranged loudmouth who makes enemies at the drop of a hat for no reason at all, tells advertisers who, with very good reason, quit advertising on Twitter, now called X, to go fuck yourself, to quote him exactly, or says to someone who dares to disagree with him, not openly, but by inference, and endorse Donald Trump as a loser by endorsing Kamala Harris as a winner. And millions of people pay attention to this. He says, I'll give you a child, as if somehow it's a threat. Well, Warren Buffett just simply gave away his money. He gave hundreds of millions of dollars, actually billions, all through a lifetime. I happen to have met and had a lovely talk with Warren Buffett's daughter once when she was part of a funding group that was putting together a group of churches that were building an interfaith center for Protestants and Catholics and Jews and Muslims to come together and demonstrate to the world they could talk to each other. That's the sort of way that Buffett has used his money. And he has one bodyguard who used to vet spaces for him when he was going to be in public, lived in an ordinary house, and was a likable human being. So he didn't need to build a private army of 100 contractor former military people who vet everything for him in this sort of growing paranoia as you make more enemies. The only person who has an even bigger security detail is another billionaire who's made a specialty of hurting people. And that, of course, is the person who started Facebook and Meta, and who is a paranoid person as well, building on a Hawaiian island a big bomb shelter to survive the coming cataclysm, or when maybe angry mothers come looking for him whose sons and daughters have committed suicide, instructed by posts on Facebook, or people whose children are snatched off the street, instructed by posts on child molesters in Facebook, this horrible checkered history of his. And so he's scared too. So are these frightened billionaires with their private armies real men when they challenge the rest of us to be real men? Or are they more like Andrew Tate, this loudmouth accused of rape, child molestation, theft, who is on trial now? Or people like Russell Brand, who mocked women and was investigated by the BBC and fired there for all the assaults that he had carried out over the years, very much like Donald Trump, who's a peeping Tom who used to break into the changing room of girls in beauty pageants. Are these real men? They aren't. They aren't. They're just sort of backward thugs. Okay, so how do you define what a real man is? Well, I'll be even more direct than that. Why do I think I'm a real man and a better example of manhood than Andrew Tate and Russell Brand and Elon Musk telling people, I will give you a child, as a kind of a threat, or telling us that America needs to step up and invigorate real men? Well, I thought a lot about manhood when my son, right out of high school, volunteered for the Marine Corps in 1999. And a couple of years later, after the World Trade Centers were destroyed and we went to war, was in Afghanistan for 2 combat tours and then 1 in Iraq, and came back safe and sound. Now, matter of fact, some of the real men that Elon Musk hangs out with are the Saudi princes, who were behind that attack, by the way, and who financed it, as did the Saudi families, not just the royal family, but many people in Saudi Arabia, this petulantly angry, misogynist state, which Elon Musk and Donald Trump feel very comfortable doing business with. But the rest of us kind of are hesitant for the same reason that we're hesitant about forgetting that the Taliban has told women they can't even speak in public now and must be covered, because those Taliban are real men too, bullies who take it out on women. And in our culture, there's a direct line between what the Taliban is doing in Afghanistan to women because they're real men and men are supposed to be in charge, and what Elon Musk is doing when he threatens Taylor Swift or calls on boys to stand up and be real men. Interestingly enough, Elon Musk and these other tech titans never volunteered for military service like my son did in 1999, and they never went to war, and they didn't stand up even in the macho department as real men. They get other people to go do target practice for them. And he hires ex-military people to protect him so he can make outlandish statements about what real men are and threaten women and fire people and mistreat them and bust unions and all the rest that Musk does and all these people do, and yet claim to be a real man. But you know, when my son came back from Afghanistan, he brought a picture with him when he was helping a friend of his on times off guard a girls' school because the Taliban were trying to murder teachers who educated girls. Now they've banned female education altogether. Sort of taken to the logical conclusion what Musk would like to do here when he disparages women or says that they were hired only because they're women or they're blacks or whatever, because they're real men. And then hire a private security detail to defend themselves. So the Taliban march around carrying guns and they execute women and stone them if they're accused of adultery. And the morality police in their white robes go around beating up women, raping them in police prisons, as do the Iranians and so forth, because these are real men. So what is a real man? What is my claim, Frank Schaeffer commentator, to be a real man? Well, my claim is not that I produced a Marine for a son who is a hero of mine. That's not my claim. My claim is that when my 3 grown children and my grandchildren, who are all grown up now, are growing up, my youngest 3 are growing up, they're in their teenage years, when they have a problem, they call or text me because I'm the person they can count on for support, for love, for care, to be their unconditional friend and final go-to, last person you can go to who will help you, the one we know will never let me down. That's what a real man is. A real man is the one whose children and grandchildren know unconditionally will never let them down. What is a real man? Is he the greatest lover in the world? Am I going to go around inseminating different women and in vitro fertilizing them to populate the world with my kind, calling for elites? The right kind of people is, as Musk says, a thinly veiled racist comment, by the way. That's the right kind of person. No, actually, a real man, perhaps, is someone who, for the last 54 years, has been the person who learned to humble himself. Because how was I raised? I was raised in an evangelical background that basically groomed me, but to be an asshole by divine right. I was told God had put men in charge of women and children. And I gave my wife, Jeannie, a very hard time for the early years of our marriage. And what is my claim to being a real man now? That I learned to say I'm sorry, and I'm wrong, and I've changed my mind, and forgive me. Because real male strength can say I'm sorry. And not qualify it, I'm sorry if I annoyed you, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Real men are the people that children and grandchildren and lovers and wives and gay partners, if you happen to be gay, know will say, I'm sorry, and mean it, and change the way they are behaving. For instance, if one of my kids turned out to be trans, I would not denounce them and disinherit them because they had shamed me the way Elon Musk did with his daughter. Because I'm a real man enough to understand that I don't have all the answers. Real men, basically, as they grow and mature, hopefully by the time they get to my age, which is 72 years of age, can not only admit when they're wrong, not only change their minds, but try to repair the damage they did when they were stupid young fools, like I was when I was part of the anti-abortion movement and the evangelical religious right in the 1970s and 80s as my dad's nepotistic sidekick, much as some of these billionaires who say they are self-made actually were born with spoons in their mouths in the case of Musk, as a South African person living in an apartheid state, which, by the way, is exactly what Donald Trump, his hero, who's a real man because he grabs women, sorry, these are the terms he used, by the pussy and can get away with it, Oh, he's a real man, just like Andrew Tate is when he is accused of having raped a 13-year-old. That's a real man, right? No, they're the sort of boy men, underdeveloped, emotional, catastrophic basket cases that actual real men, even when they're young, like I was in a British boarding school, and all boys boarding school, boy, it was tough. We were real men. But even then, we would recognize those few amongst us who were going to grow up to be thugs, and we didn't like them. We being most boys, most people who were going to grow in age and learn some wisdom, we didn't like people like that even then. So, what is a real man? A real man is not someone who steps up and says, look how strong I am. He's someone who, like I'm doing today, goes shopping because I'm going to make roast chickens and gravy and rice for my children and grandchildren and my Marine son, who's now 44, who will be coming for his birthday dinner today, because I have nothing to prove. You see, I can also do, quote, real man things. I'm a really good carpenter and mason, and I can build. I could actually build you a house. But that's not what makes me a real man. What makes me a real man is what would go on inside that house, where I would be confident enough in myself to be gentle, to be kind, to be nurturing, to do all these things that these so-called fake real men like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and all these other losers associate with feminized traits, because real men don't do that, right? They just get out there and fuck around and make babies and hit up on their employees and build a private security army of 100 people because they're so afraid of the world around them, having made so many enemies needlessly because they're not outspoken in the cause of justice and goodness, the way Warren Buffett was, and investing in the future and building schools or libraries, the way billionaires in the past did, or the Hammer Museum and art collections and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They want power and they don't want to be regulated and they don't want to have the law apply to them because they're real men. And so they just lie and lie again and lie again and get more and more paranoid and afraid. The world is against me. Well, it's against you for a reason. Because you too, in a way, all these real men were groomed to be assholes. If they weren't in evangelical circles, it wasn't by divine right. It was just by rich, stupid parents who coddled them the way Donald Trump and Elon Musk and these others were coddled. Where they dropped out of Harvard and they started a peeping Tom business called Facebook so they could ogle girls because they couldn't get any because they were these wimpy losers. And then parlay it into a worldwide empire. And now they build a bunker in Hawaii because they're so afraid, and a big army spending tens of millions of dollars a year or more on private security because they know what they've done deep down. And their wealth didn't come from a place of strength. It came from a place of weakness and insecurity. So what is a real man? Well, this sounds counterintuitive, but it's someone who doesn't need to ever talk about being a real man, except in the negative, the way I'm doing today, to tell younger young men and boys, you'll know when you're on the track to being a real man, when all the people in your life call you when they have a problem. Not because you know everything, but because they can count on your, quote, feminized attributes of caring. We can all be mothers. This will be weird. And I'm not talking about some trans idea of men getting pregnant. That's another subject. We'll leave it alone for the moment. Or he, she, they, them stuff. No, I don't mean that. I mean mothering used as a word of caring for people. And I have a little secret for you, young men. Real men know how to care for and mother those around them. This isn't feminine, this is human. And if you read books, for instance, like The Old Way by Elizabeth Marshall Thomas, whose dad founded Raytheon and who went to live with the Sand people in the Kalahari in the 1950s. The real men of the real hunter-gatherers were not people who only ate meat and did real men things and built muscle and showed off their abs and all this bullshit. Cage fighting, what sad people. who do things like that and think that's a masculine attribute. They wouldn't last 10 seconds in a hunter-gatherer camp that actually had to trek through the desert for 4 days without water, hunting. And the women who went out looking for the tubers and the herbs and the plants that they actually lived off. They were not big-time meat eaters. Meat was a rare luxury, by the way. Always has been. But the real men were the people who, as Elizabeth Marshall Thomas and her parents observed and chronicled in this wonderful book, The Old Way, of this group that had been in the Kalahari 80,000 years. Did you get that? 80,000 years. They survived because the males contributed to childcare. They didn't see that as feminized. The young teen boys, do you know what they did? They played with the little kids. It was a boy thing to do, a real man thing to do. These were the people who would grow up and hunt game with poison darts and track them for 3 days through the desert while their mothers and cousins and aunts and other men and older men went out foraging and hunter-gathering. It not only took a village, these little villages of 20, 30, 40, 50 people in these communities that would move around in the Kalahari cared for each other. That's what real men do. And by the way, my son, who was in the Marine Corps and with whom I wrote a book, Keeping Faith, a father-son story about love in the United States Marine Corps, that became a bestseller. Why was it a bestseller? Because we talked about powerful, macho, real men? No. That book is about the love between a father and a young son going unexpectedly into the Marine Corps, serving his country, and the respect I had for that choice, and the love we both felt for each other, and the love my son felt for his drill instructors who were preparing him not to die in battle by helping him be strong. Because you see, the Marine Corps trains young men to survive by caring for each other in combat. That's what real men do. That's what real female Marines do. That's what real parents do. That's what real mothers and fathers do. That's what real gay men do in gay relationships and marriages. So I have another definition to leave you with as I wrap this up. The real question here is not what is a real man. I have a better question for you. What is a human? And what can a human be? And I'll leave you with this thought. Modern science has proven something. It's not about the survival of the fittest. It's about the survival of the friendliest. That's what real men do. My name is Frank Schaefer.